Manoj has a family thing going on right now, so I am flying solo today. I'm gonna go ahead and go get the other half started. They're gonna be testing first. I'm gonna be working on some key math concepts with you guys, and then we will break just a little bit early so that we can give you a full hour to do your test section for the second half, and then we'll go over the answers at the very end and then move on. Remember, you can email him any questions that you have from the previous science and math tests you've done, and also this one as well, because we're not going to have a whole lot of time to answer questions once we finish. So we'll get that started in just a second, and we'll go do that. Anybody still waiting? We are recording. We're off to a good start. So, first and foremost, I've got some things that I deemed interesting, or I'm not sure if you've talked about this or not, and so I wanted to go over it. But do you have any math questions to begin with, whether it's from a previous test or something you're doing in school? Do you have anything that you'd like to know about? Okay, so going to erase all this, maybe. Where'd the eraser go? Going to erase all this. Like I said, we will stop a little bit earlier than usual for break so that you have the full test time. But again, if you have not yet, Manoj says to make sure to email him both math and science questions. He said he's had one person do so. One of the first things that has come up as I've worked with students recently, do any of you know what consecutive integers are? Consecutive just means without a break. And so consecutive integers are going to be three numbers that are right in a row. So for instance, if 5 is the first integer, next one would be 6, next one would be 7. 5, 6, and 7 are consecutive integers. One of the things that comes up with this is that you can have consecutive even integers, or all the even integers in a row. So in that case, if I start with 6, the next one would be, not 7 because that's odd, 8 would be the next even one. And then after that, 10 would be the next even one from there. And so with consecutive integers, if you don't know what they are, they just say 3 consecutive integers. You have to start with the variable for your first one, and then the next one would be that number plus 1, because it's the next one up. And the next one would be that number plus 2, because it's the next one beyond that. And with consecutive even or odd, you'd start with your number, and then the next one is that number plus 2 more, because 1 is the next opposite sign. If this is even, there'd be an odd number, and then the next even number would be in 2, and the next even number again would be in 4. And so if they ask you about consecutive, odd, or even, consecutive just means right after each other, and the way you get to them is you have a variable, and then the next one would just be plus 2. The next one would just be plus 4. And so that one that's come up with both my Algebra 1 and 2 students recently, so it is prime fodder for throwing on a test. Oh, we've got another one. I'm gonna go double check the other room, because I'm going crazy. All right, so for a real problem, so this one was interesting because it says to find the measure of an arc cut by one side of a circumscribed regular hexagon. So this one is throwing a lot of words at you, and so I was picking it for the word salad effect. And so it asks to find the arc that is cut by one side of a circumscribed regular hexagon. So we're going to work from the back and go forward. What's a hexagon? 6. Hex 6. So regular. What's regular? Geometry term. In English, what's regular? Normal, average, everyday. So in geometry, regular means that all the sides are the same and all the angles are the same. Okay. So circumscribed. Circumscribed is a word that says if we have a circle that's centered in the middle, all these corners will be on a circle. That's a circumscribed shape. It's just that shape is fit inside a circle. So we have a regular circumscribed hexagon. Have you guys dealt with those at all? Or are we just throwing a whole bunch of new words at you? Well, so finally it asks for the arc measure. Arc is what you think it is. It's this curved line. And so this arc is cut by one side of this regular circumscribed hexagon. The arc measure is just talking about what's that angle right there. So, without the word salad, and without knowing anything, what would be your best guess on that angle? 60. Because the whole circle is 360. Anyone who's fond of winter Olympic sports knows about 360, or skateboarding. So whole circle is 360. It's cut into 6 pieces. That angle is 60. The arc is 60. So whole bunch of scary words. for something that's semi-intuitive if they give you a picture, and just try and draw it out and work from it if you don't. So, since we didn't do that, I don't think we're going to talk about the other one. We'll move on to something else. Good news is, you do not have to know that to pass the ACT. You don't even have to know that to do well on the ACT. You have to know that to do perfect, but I didn't do perfect either. Did well, but not perfect. All right, so, again, circles. Just says find x. Any ideas on how to get started with that? Yeah.
Once you add the 5 and 25, you divide the 2, you get 14.5.
It's a 24,
There you go.
but you're kind of close. You're close to the divide by 2. The most important thing to know is this is a radius. Radiuses on circles are the distance from the center to the outside, right? That means that this is also x. This is also x. Most importantly, this is also x. And so all we have right here is a right triangle. If this whole thing is 24, you are dividing it in half, we get 14. Sorry, that's probably really small for video. But we get 14 on that little section, right? And so now, we don't have to worry about the circle. It's just part of the initial setup. We've got a right triangle with 2 sides. No, it's just a Pythagorean theorem problem. So, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are going to be the ones that are by the right angle, or the legs. C is always the longest one across from the right angle, or the hypotenuse. So we have 5 squared, 25, plus 14 squared. Definite calculator fodder. I don't know that one. No, up to 13, but I don't know 14. 14 times 14, 10 times 10. 100. 196, yeah. And so we have 196 plus the 25, or 25, blah. And there we get 1, there carries, so the 2 stays. So 221, what is the square root of 221? Probably going to be decimal, don't be afraid of it.
14.86.
So, yep, square root of that, 14.86. Makes sense, especially with this setup. It has to be longer than both of them, but it's not going to be very much longer because 5 isn't a very long side. So, especially because these are your tests, don't be afraid of scribbling out the things you don't have to worry about, or circling, this is what I'm dealing with now. Don't be afraid of drawing a new X in. Yes?
How did you get 14 again? You put the 24 in half?
Uh-huh.
That's 12.
You are correct.
Yeah.
I am wrong. Thank you. Go back to the original problem and don't do leaps of brain. So, yeah. And then it's just 13. Woohoo. It's a triple, that's easier. So, for the record, if you don't know that one, it's a Pythagorean triple. It's a special number, but you could still do 5 squared plus 12 squared, 25 plus 144 gives you 169. Square root of 169 is 13. Yay for your answer. All right. All right, so again, x is the default. If they give you another variable other than x and you like x better, you can treat it like x and nothing changes. But this one gives us 2 lines. Line L, line M. They are cut by this line here, and also another line on the inside here. This is said to be 3x plus 20. This one is 5x minus 32. So it says find x that makes these 2 lines parallel. So go ahead and give that one a shot.
I was gonna answer the
Oh,
question.
okay. So, my first question is going to be, do you know where to start? Okay, awesome. Parallel lines cut by a transversal. Second question is going to be, does that line in the middle mean anything at all? No, just ignore it. Don't get thrown. So, in parallel lines cut by a transversal, there's only 2 options. Either they're congruent, same measure, or they're a linear pair or supplementary, they add up to 180. Which situation do we have here? Yeah. They're congruent? Agree, disagree? Easiest way is to say, okay, this angle here and this angle here are a pair of vertical angles. They're congruent. Corresponding angles are going to be in the same location. This one is the bottom right. So if we look at this intersection, bottom right is the corresponding or the same. This one is the top left. Looking at the second intersection, again, top left, it's going to be the same. Those are all our congruent angles. So we have this one and this one, and again, their corresponding angles are here and here. So since we've got an orange and a green, they'd actually be supplementary or adding up to 180. Again, know that there's only 2 options, and if you just want to draw it in, that's fine. This one, the 2 ones that they give you actually aren't one of the standard pairs that they work with. They're not alternate interior, they're not same side exterior, they're just 2 very random angles, and so figuring out which relationship you've got is going to be our first step. But now we have 3x plus 20 plus 5x minus 32 equals 180. Simplifying 3x and 5x, we have 8x. 20 minus 32, we have negative 12, equals 180. Adding 12 to both sides, 8x equals 192. 8 will go into 19 twice. With 3 left over, 8 will go into 32 4 times. Again, apologize for the slopey handwriting when it gets too low. Another way to see these is to imagine if the lines got really, really close together, they become more and more on top of each other. To remember that those are going to be the same. Questions on where we got that? Okay. Okay. This one, I'm absolutely sure that you can do it. I picked it because I want to talk about a faster way to do it. So they give us 2 points, -3, 7, and 2, 5, and say, what is the slope between them? How do you find the slope between 2 lines? So you can go back to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But for me, slope is about the change. That's what it means. So here's x and y. Here's x and y. From 7 to 5, how has it changed? 2 up or down? So we got -2. From -3 to 2, we've gone up or +5. That's your slope. So you can go back to the formula if you like it, but if you understand what is the change, it's going to make things a little bit easier. So next concept. First and foremost, are you comfortable with function notation? This just means whatever they give you for x, you put into the equation. And so if I ask for the function of 4, it's going to be the square root of 4, it equals 2. If I ask for the function of 5, it's the square root of 5, and we just leave it because we can't simplify it. whatever goes inside here gets spit out as a replacement for x. Okay, that's function notation. So they can also combine these into f of g of x. Have you seen this one before? Okay, getting a couple nods. So the question that they ask is find f of g of x such that it passes through the point 3, 5. And again, find b. So, giving you a minute. Where would you start? So f of g of x, we're going to start with our function f, replace x with this whole thing. And so we have this equals the square root of x squared minus b. So a little bit difficult to work with, except they already gave us the numbers and we are just looking for this. So 3 goes in for x, 5 goes in for function value or y, and we have 5 equals the square root of, sorry, not x, 3 squared minus b. To get rid of our square root, we can square both sides, or in other words, 25 equals 9 and minus b, which means that subtracting 9 from both sides, 16 equals negative b, or in other words, b equals negative 16. You don't have to square root anything, you just have to keep following the math. And so, what would this be as a final equation? What would f of g of x be for this situation? The reason I ask is because negative signs get tricky sometimes. We have x squared. It was minus b. Our b has been replaced by negative 16. Minus negative 16, it would change into plus 16. So don't lose those. When you have minus and you come out to your answer being a negative number, it would change that sign around. went over quadratics a bit with you guys. So, what does that one equal as far as factored, or what would the zeros of that function be? I found one that you don't feel as comfortable with.
-3.
-3, good, because you would take the square root of that last number, is 3 and 3. It would add up to the middle number of 6, and this is just x and x there, and so what makes that 0 is -3. This one plays off that idea, and it says for what variable k does (4x squared plus kx plus 25 equals 0. These are the quadratics that have one solution, or a double root. The question is, where does that middle number come from? On these ones, it's easy to get complacent to just do the square root of this last one. It's where the 3 came from, and it doubled to be the center. But it's actually coming from both A and C, both the beginning and the end. On this one, it just happened to be 1. But when you think of FOIL with that first outside, inside, last, those outside, inside number, or the x term, comes from both what's in front of the x and what's after it. And so it's going to be square root of 25 is 5, but the square root of 4x squared isn't just x. It's going to be, in fact, 2x. And so now if we look at FOIL, we'd have our outside to be 10x and our inside to also be 10x, and this would be 20. So again, that's a matter of being familiar with FOIL and factoring. And so if you are, that question's not scary. If you don't, honestly, I would probably move on, because that one's not a, well, I suppose since it's a multiple choice, you could try a test, guess, and check and see if it gave you 0. But, all right. Last one, I think. Yep, last one. I have, no, actually I lied. There's one more that I wanted to show you, and then we will have about the right amount of time. So, this one is addressing stuff that you've dealt with before, but especially if you're just in Algebra 1, I don't think that you've seen it, and so I just want to show you that it's not particularly scary. So, It says for all x greater than 5, what can we simplify this down to? And so this is combining greatest common factor, it's combining factoring the trinomial or those quadratics, it's got a little bit of everything. So, top is easier. We have 5x squared minus x to the third. What do they have in common? Break it up into steps. Do they share any factor of number? Any numbers? No. Do they share any factor of variables? Yeah. We've got 2x's here and 3x's here. They have in common 2x's. And so we can pull out x squared to the front and leave behind 5 minus x. On the bottom, we have x squared minus x minus 20. So x squared, x, and 20 are what we're trying to factor. Can we factor out an x? No, because 20 is just a number. And so we can't have a GCF of an x. These two don't have any numbers in front. So we can't factor out a number. And so we're going to have to do it by the binomial, reverse FOIL, however you see factoring a trinomial. But you do not have to start from scratch. The way this problem is leading, one of these is going to lead into here. And so since this is positive, I'm going to change this one more way. I'm going to take out a negative number. And that will change this into -5 positive x. Or in other words, x minus 5. So now, this one can break up into x minus 5 and x plus 4. Because -5 times 4 is -20. -5 plus 4, -1. And so by virtue of this, they already give you a hint at what you're going to be getting rid of. And so x minus 5, x plus 4, this cancels. And so we have negative x squared, or negative x squared over x plus 4. So again, you've done the factoring before. You've done greatest common factors before. I don't know that you have done canceling factors out, but it's something that's really accessible to you. You can still do it, even if you haven't quite seen it before. And so I wanted to show you that one just because it's right there on the edge. It wouldn't be that much harder. All right, so last one's a geometry one. Go figure. There's lots of geometry on these. So the setup says we have point R, point S, point T, and point U. And RS is 5x plus 7, and TU is 7x minus 3. And we are given that S is the midpoint of RT, and T is the midpoint don't see a lot of pencils moving, so you either really know you're really lost or you're really mentally burnt out. Where are you at? So, first of all, what does midpoint mean? Middle. Midpoint means middle, or in other words, it's cutting it exactly in half. And so S is the midpoint of RT. Here's RT. It means that this is the same as that. Same way, T is the midpoint of SU. Here's S, here's U. T is right in the middle, so this is the same as that. Now we've got 3 equal segments, and more importantly, we have 2 with the algebra. They're the same. And so 5x plus 7 equals 7x minus 3. Throwing some algebra, 10 equals 2x, x equals 5. Check my math. Did I jump that too fast? Okay. Are we done? No. Please answer the question they give you. Finding your variable is not enough. Make sure that you answer what they want. So they want RU. What's the easiest way to get that?
Just do 5.
Okay.
That's 32 times 3 is 96.
Yeah.
Do the same things.
We've got 32. We have 32 again. We have 32 again. We went to all that trouble to talk about midpoints and that they're equal. Use it. And yes, we would have 96. All right. Go ahead and take an 8-minute break, at least by my watch. We'll start the testing up again at 4:50, and that way you can have the full hour of testing and time to get answers and check answers.